Now, hello and welcome back to Crossroads of Cognizance, the one-stop shop where we talk about all things magical, energetic, spirituality, and we just, for an hour, we just shoot the shit about whatever comes to mind on specific subject matter. So, speaking of which, today we have our special guest back. One of our favorites. Well, you've been the only special guest, but definitely a favorite. Eric Rasbold, and along with him being here, we are going to bring up aliens as a discussion. Just nothing in particular, but what we want to see in the comment section as the broadcast goes along is your insight, your stories, your questions. We aren't going to pretend to be experts on this topic. I don't know if we pretend to be experts on any topic, but we definitely have various experiences that we hope will expand your mind and change your life. So, why don't we do some introductions? Eric, we've met you before, but who are you today?
Who am I? What did you say? Who am I today?
Today.
Not an expert on aliens. I think most people know me, as Katrina's husband, right? And running Crossroads Metaphysical together, and that's pretty much it. That's who I am today. Okay, so my past is in my past, so I'm not gonna go over my resume, but right now I'm Katrina's husband, and we're running a metaphysical business.
Wow, that's very specific.
I don't know if they froze or if I froze.
Lost our internet. There it goes. Their internet went away. Sorry. I'm not even qualified to have this conversation, so I'm just going to eat apples and watch them do it. Hello to Stephanie. Hello to Bram. Hello to Debs. Thanks for joining us, y'all. Y'all are going to have a really good time because these two are going to play off of each other and just shoot the shit. They're going to hit the ground running, and I'm just going to be over here eating my apples. And Dahlia, who are you today?
Today I am. Today has been interesting. We're about to go into a conversation about aliens and things like that, and there are a lot of also planetary things going on. So maybe apropos, there's Venus in retrograde, Chiron in retrograde, whatever. And you asked me who I am, and today I am a student of life. Like, that is it. Fuck all my certifications. Like, really,
good
today I am a student of life, and learning all the things today. So, but let's jump into the topic at hand: aliens, extraterrestrials, beings that are not from here. I feel like I don't know how much you guys experience this in the I would say more like the pagan community, right? Because I don't know how much New Age people really like interact with you all, the store, the energy that you bring. But I will say in metaphysical communities I've seen, New Age communities I've seen, anything that's not overtly like Christian, Catholic, religious, there is a huge draw towards the extraterrestrials. Like, am I connected in some way? How do I talk to them? How can we as a planet reach out? And then it ebbs and flows into fields like channeling, firsthand experiences, and I've even seen some mainstream stuff about how like no human being is from here. So all of that said, like, I just went in like 8 different directions for the conversation.
No, that's good. It gives us a lot of jumping off points.
So what piqued your mind when I started talking about those things, Eric? What stood out to you?
Well, when you talk about no human beings being from here,
okay,
right? So if we look at, and of course, there's a lot of schools of thought as to whence we come, right? I mean, you've got your the God of Abraham and that kind of young Earth creationist theory. You have your evolutionists, which not to be confused with abiogenesis. Okay, just the evolutionary path. Of course, you have the people that also believe in abiogenesis. I am not one of them. Okay, but when you look at all of our what we can tell from the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom, and then you have these human beings that are kind of separated out from those things, right? If you look into our past and try to suss out, where is our ancestral home, right? Where is our native environment that we can survive? What's our natural food? You start looking into the things like, we can't even drink surface water. We can't stand to the sun. We have to wear clothes, unless we're in an absolutely ideal environment, which does not carry through from day to night. The temperatures change and the winds change. And I mean, we need shelter, and pretty much every day of our lives. We're not particularly fast. We're not particularly strong as far as running down, our quarry, our prey. We don't really have any prey that would suffer at the fate of our hands. At our tools, yeah. At our minds, definitely. Which is another strange thing. We don't have a lot of evidence or precedent outside of human beings for a weak, slow animal ascending to the very top of the food chain. That's kind of unique to us as well. And so just little things like this kind of, sparked me on a journey, a rabbit hole, if you will, as to, do we actually come from here? Are we from here? Right? So that was what piqued my interest about what you just said. So I like to, go into that a bit and see what your thoughts are on that.
Well, and as far as the different theories of how we've evolved, and I found myself Googling abiogenesis because it was the first time I've heard that, and I love long, big words. And so I looked that up, and as you started talking about how we are not apex predators. Like we don't have the ability, like you said, to endure the environment just as is. And so like that completely blew my mind. My reference to us not being from here comes from multiple documentaries and then, channeled sources and things like that, where the theory is that, there's two. The first is that as Earth was forming and still a bit in its molten state, Jupiter, Neptune, and sort of those outer planets were able to come in a lot closer as they were making their way out to the outer rim of the solar system. And so they passed Earth at some point, and some of the things that they shed, especially, which one's frozen? Isn't it? It's Pluto, isn't it? Pluto's frozen. That they shed some of their materials, and those hit Earth. And that's how some of our genetic structure, matter, material that would eventually become human ended up on this planet. From a channeled place, I found myself having visions of the 13-ish, we'll narrow it down to 13, there being 13 primary star systems that sort of have interacted over millennia, all having an opportunity to seed this planet and doing so through crystal structures. So basically they put some of their DNA into a crystalline structure. Somehow that gets rocketed here. Think Superman coming here from Krypton kind of deal. It gets injected into the Earth, and as the Earth begins to cool and form, those pieces break out, intermingle, and then we evolve further to become what we are now. And why we look so differently is because parts of us came from different star systems. So that's what I'm saying. There's two schools of thought that I'm familiar with as far as how we are not from here.
Okay. Do you know about the? I'm sorry. Can you give me that? Just turn it off. Have you? Are you familiar with the? Okay, I've heard some of the channeled talks from the Pleiadians.
Yes.
The Galactic Command. And all that good stuff, and how They talk about how our galaxy is mostly humanoid as far as the intelligent life forms go, and but I haven't really gotten a lot of the origin story from those things that I watched. And like you, I've watched and read tons of stuff, mostly because I don't have any personal experience with anything that I would consider to be extraterrestrial. I've never seen anything, nothing, and it's very disappointing. Because I had a particular client. I had a particular client that she did. Whoa! And I'll tell a bit about her story maybe later. But I've heard those channeled ideas about the Pleiadians and that sort of group of people that are maybe millions of years more evolved than we are, and we're kind of earlier in that path, and we're kind of all heading the same direction, but there are people that are just groups that are way much further than us, and they're kind of maybe shepherding us along a little bit, keeping us from completely destroying ourselves, which also supports the theory of why there's been a sudden uptick in UFO sightings and alien experiences since the tests of the first nuclear weapons, right? And for us to release the gamma form of radiation, that was the first time that we were able to do that. And they believe it attracted the attention of these people that were like, okay, the humans are getting close, right? We need to maybe start keeping a closer eye on them. That kind of stuff. I mean, that kind of thing lines up. It's pretty interesting. But for myself, I haven't really, unfortunately, I haven't seen anything like where just, I don't know. The bummer. So I read a lot. I satisfy myself by trying to read a lot and watch a lot.
Well, speaking of reading, Bram seems to have some recommendations about Jacques Vallée, Joshua Hutchin, Mike Cleland, and John Keel. I will throw a name in here, Stephen Greer. Are you familiar with his Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind work?
I haven't read it. I'm aware of it. I haven't read it. Yeah.
And I wouldn't say that I'm like deeply versed either. Fortunately, my partner exposed me to the material, and he has a whole system of how you can get into meditative states, and eventually, with time and practice or in group settings, make contact with extraterrestrials that they've recorded through light interactions, energy, information coming through that they couldn't possibly know, things like that. And then for me, so I have stories to share. I was sharing a little bit beforehand. So as, how old was I? I think I was about 10 years old on a military base. There was a green light coming through my window, and I was just, at first I was scared, and then I was fascinated, and I found myself peering through the window. And so for me, that was like my first sort of extraterrestrial experience. And I was a kid, right? So I'm like, I don't know what it was or if it was real. But from there, when I started getting into healing work, one of the first classes that I took was Solaris energy healing technique. And the man there claimed that, you can open up your central channel, your sushumna, and if you open that channel wide enough, you can pull energy through, you can do healing work, all of these different things. And so that was our first experience, was him showing us how to open that channel as wide as possible. And when I did so, I looked up and I saw 4 gray men standing sort of two on either side of him. And I was like, at that point, there are several stages in my spiritual journey where I'm like, nope, I finally lost it. This is it. Like I've jumped the shark, get that padded cell ready, because I'm just going to jump in, and here we are. And that was one of them, because I don't presume to think that we are such a great species and space that we are the only ones in the universe. But to see them standing in somebody's living room was far beyond my what I thought was possible. So I've had that. And then next stage was when I started channeling. I actually brought through star system called Regulus, and that was 2019. So they were actually speaking to me about what was going to happen in 2020, but I was more amazed that they were even talking to me. So I was like, what do you mean get the stories? Like they started talking about get stories from the elderly and all these things, and I was like, I don't understand. And then of course, like I said, shock and awe, because again, aliens are speaking through my body. What's happening? So those firsthand experiences are really incredible, but I think you'll find a lot of value in Stephen Greer's, at least his meditation. I think it's like, and for those of you out there, it's a free thing that you can work with.
Are you familiar with William Bramley's book, The Gods of Eden?
No, not at all.
Yeah, William Bramley, The Gods of Eden. This was, gosh, I read this probably 25 years ago. And what he does is he goes through a lot of, for the main religions, I mean, he goes through their texts, right? The Old Testament, Zarathustra stuff, things like that. And shows how these line up with some of the more ancient alien astronaut theoried types of origins. And it's absolutely fascinating. I mean, it really, really is. It'll make you read things with a different perspective, especially with the Old Testament, and it shows how a lot of the communications that Moses was probably having, or Ezekiel or any of that stuff, was probably with some actual physical being, not necessarily a god, who is, riding on some type of aircraft or piece of aircraft, spaceship, whatever. All these things, really, really interesting. Very interesting.
Say the name of the book again.
I saw you looking at me making big eyes, so I was like, "What?"
I was trying to turn away from the camera so I could pick my teeth.
Okay.
Thanks, Tony.
Busted. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you did.
No, that's a really excellent book. I personally, even though I haven't had any firsthand encounters, I think it would be ridiculous to assume that we're the only ones here.
Right.
Even if you're a Christian or a Muslim or any of the the gods of Abraham type of follower, you can still look around and say, hey, there may be others here, because it doesn't say anywhere that humans were the only thing God created, right?
Right.
I
Well,
mean,
and you can look around and see.
yeah, that's not outside of the scope of those religions either. So that's perfectly fine. And if only a fraction of a percent of any of the planets that we have actually observed are habitable, well, there's a good chance that they might be. So I don't think the fine-tuning argument that a lot of anti-atheists make, I'm not going to say Christians and Muslims make it, but the anti-atheists will make the fine-tuning argument for Earth. I don't think that just applies to Earth. Besides, that's probably why we're here. But there's a lot of different roads that the idea of aliens can go down. I mean, you could look at it from the perspective of the Anunnaki or something like that, where they're aliens that created human beings, that kind of thing. Now that has a lot of interesting implications for the idea of humanity's sovereignty and whether or not there's an afterlife that we will participate in, whether or not we have a soul. I mean, if we're created by some other being, I don't know, can they also create the soul and provide for all of that? I mean, that's kind of a scary thought, but there's a lot of research and discussion and debates that have gone into that I find really fascinating to watch and listen to.
Well, let's go into that for a minute. Let's sort of play with those theories of being created by other beings and the process of the soul. I mean, what we're on an evolutionary wave right now with AI technology and things like that, right? And sentience being the primary concern of people. So we can create these sort of intelligences, and then those intelligences can go on to evolve, and maybe, I mean, I don't imagine them to grow a soul, but they become something why not us, right? Why not us being created by something and then, am I making sense? I feel like I'm just...
You are. I've studied a lot about the AI phenomena, kind of how it got to where it is.
Mhm.
And looking at at least the current state of technology, I think there's so much, and this really goes into deep philosophy. There's so much we don't know about sentience, about the property of being conscious. Okay, I mean, even the argument, or is it even an emergent property? Okay, consciousness. We're not sold on that. I mean, it's half one way, half the other. I do not believe that consciousness is emergent. I just don't. And I say that with not a lot of scientific backup. It's just a feeling.
Right.
I don't, as far as like the AI goes, we may be able to make an ultimately supreme decision-making process. But I don't think that process will ever develop the will to live, the will to procreate itself. Okay, even if its idea of its own lifespan is eternal, the will to go on, that's something that I just don't think can be created by humans. And by extension, I don't think that can be created by aliens. Now, again, I don't have a whole lot outside of philosophy to put toward this, or even my own feeling. Or hell, you know what? I'm not going to lie. I might be biased. That just might not be what I want. I mean, I'll just try to be totally honest. I can't see that. I just can't see that type of thing developing. Gosh, there's a single-celled eukaryotic organism. I'm trying to remember its name. It's one of the C's, like C dash, like C difference. It's one of the C cells, right? And there's this big project going on right now where we have mapped out literally everything about this organism. We know every nerve, every translation of RNA to DNA that's occurring in there, absolutely everything that's going on, and we still don't get it. We still don't get it. We still don't understand why this thing works. And I think that's something, I mean, I might be getting a little off track here, but I think that's something about the human condition. We always understand the how before we understand the why. You know what I mean? So with that, I'm confident that the why might be coming. I mean, for example, we knew eons before we knew what a tree was. We knew how to use wood, right? How to burn it. I mean, I got a glass of water here. I know what to do with that. I know how it works. I don't know what it is. Our best chemists really don't know what it is. Electricity, same thing. We don't know what it is, but we have all kinds of fascinating ways to use it. So maybe now that we know what trees are, maybe someday we will know what these other properties are that we just know the how of right now. So I have a little bit of confidence in that, but I don't think that will ever give rise to us being able to create things that have a will to live, that have a separate, self-identifiable sovereignty within them. I just don't think that's something that's emergent that we can give. What do you think, hon?
I think I made 6 things with a pretty strong will to live. That's why I have to contribute to this conversation.
Outside of ourselves.
I made these myself with a little help. 3 minutes of help.
A little help for your friends.
With 10 minutes of help.
Oh,
the distinction is fascinating. That whole piece of having the will to live, having that desire to even, you said procreate, make more of itself. I think I guess, and maybe it's just, again, a feeling like you were saying, but I feel like it is, as we come into our understanding of who we are and how we are as creators, right? Because for so long we just look to the sky or whatever your belief system is to say that's the only creator, even though we create every day. I mean, inventions happen, we go out, we can take a species on the brink of extinction, probably because of us, and we can try, go into trying to make it return, or what they're doing with cloning, or how they're playing with cells to try and develop organs and body parts and things like that. And like the creation aspect goes on and on in everyday life, but nobody stops to say this is exactly what, God, the universe, the oversoul does. And so I think that I feel like, because we are now getting away from survival and more into that space of that creator space, that I think that one day, even if it's by accident or have you, that we will accidentally create something that wants to live, has the will to live, as you put it, or wants to self-actualize and do something more, be something more. And I hope, like, this is the hope part, that it doesn't want to outdo us or undo us in the process.
Right. It's hard because the geek part of me, right, looks at something like RNA translation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you read that out, you can, look at the Genome Project or all that, or even an electrophoresis, right? When you read that out, those acids, it looks like code. It looks like computer code. It literally looks like that, right? And to me, that is almost as indicative of an author as the appearance of a book would be indicative of an author. Now, I may be totally off base there. But so the smallest building blocks of our lives, well, DNA is in every living thing. So, well, not every living thing, but most of it that matters anyway. When you look at something like that, and it's almost like you're looking at our smallest bit saying, God, there must be a programmer somewhere,
Yeah.
That's interesting, because that can go a lot of different ways. Number one, it can be absolutely false that is the case. That's an assumption that I'm making. Okay.
Right.
But it could point to a creator, divine or otherwise. Right. And if I look at the stories of the Anunnaki, and the ancient, the Ias and Enlils and Enkis and all that ancient Mesopotamian stuff, that pointed to these astronauts, the planet Nibiru, all that good stuff. I'm sure you're familiar with that one. And they're coming back. Do you remember how that was going on? 6 or 7 years ago, how Nibiru was coming back? It was hiding behind Uranus or Jupiter or something, and you can see it coming. And all that.
I remember, I didn't get too deep into that, but I do remember hearing about the planet getting closer and closer. And I think I even posted something about that earlier this year. Regardless, though, I did recall hearing something about that.
Yeah, and so they posit that humans were created by these alien gods, for the purposes of mining gold on Earth, which just seems ridiculous to me. But whatever. Okay, they were into the monoatomic gold and all that stuff, and Earth is the only place you can find it. Blah blah blah. So we needed slaves. We made humans, and then eventually we abandoned the humans and left them to their own devices. I can't buy that for 1,000 reasons, but the main one being philosophically. If I bought into the idea that we were created by another race somewhere, well, then that just consigns us to nihilism.
Mm-hmm.
There is, we're basically a created machine, and we die and that's it. And there's nothing. I can't do it. I can't. It's repugnant to my mind. I can't go there. So as solid as those theories might be, if they were, I still wouldn't be able to. If I was shown the truth of it, I would have trouble buying it. You know what I'm saying?
Sure,
Because
sure.
it would just be that terrible for me. But the idea of there being other beings out there that are acting in a custodial capacity for the human race, to bring us like almost like a bridge keeper or something, to shepherd us across the valley of darkness in subtle and unseen ways. I'm totally down with that. That's cool. Like the Canadians and all that. I mean, that word, we need all the help we can get. You see what's going on in Russia right now?
Yeah.
We're about to find out about those gamma rays, So yeah, that's we could use that.
So, and that's kind of where my mind goes away from the sort of the I mean, I've never bought into that whole, we were slaves made by other races, but more the Pleiadians, the Arcturians, like just the things that I've come across and experienced for myself have been just that Earth is this great experiment, and they wanted to, like, this is the sandbox, and they're trying to figure out what, or not figure out, but rather support our evolutionary experience. Like, how do we become the ultimate of what this is, human being, or human doing on some occasions. So that said, my interactions with like how extraterrestrial aliens have played is that piece of us advancing faster than we ideally should have been able to, giving us certain technologies, even down to, we brought up Stephen Greer before, his experience with extraterrestrials has given him a new way to meditate, which he has given to other people, that is replicatable and all of these things. And so they keep sort of shaking the ant farm every now and again and putting in new variables to see how we interact and try to usher us towards peace, while what's woven into our nature is also destruction. And this is how the aliens are sort of dealing with us, but we have a piece of them in us, so they have a vested interest.
Right.
And this is why, some people are, so like I've done, and I wouldn't say extensive self research, but one of the modalities that I ended up involving myself in was called soul realignment, and one of the big tenets of that is where your soul originated from. And so that is to say, soul, sentience, your consciousness began on one planet, which was likely not Earth. And then it may have traveled to others, and you may have been different races of beings. And that has implications for your personality, what your drive here is. So like Arcturians are big on technology, and they want to see development take place and education and things like that. So if we sat down, and maybe you're an Arcturian, right, Eric? I mean, you're big on like education and knowledge and using different forms of technology for different things. And weren't you an engineer at some point?
Yeah, in a couple different capacities, or a couple
Right.
different disciplines, yeah.
So going into meditation or working with pendulums, or however that information is sourced, that we would be talking about you being maybe part Arcturian, and that was your whole mission here, was to gather as much information technology as possible and share it with other people so that they then can evolve from what you've learned, or in moments when you may have been inspired to work with, say, singing bowls in a particular capacity. Like, this is all the extraterrestrial influence that I've run into. It's not been that sort of slaver, we're coming back for you and you've done all these things, but how can we help you evolve? You are family, kind of thing.
Right. It's
I'm just watching.
oh, my sweetie went away. I'm all alone. So when you're talking about that, I hear that type of thing echoed through a lot of NDE stories. Okay, And they do talk about how Earth is like this place that we get to go to. It's not a punishment, right?
Right.
It's
Sometimes
one
it
of
feels like it.
yeah. Well, it's hard in because it is so physical, right? The immersiveness of that physical 3-dimensional experience is more real and complete here than it is in the other places that the soul can go. So that they talk a lot about, they being the NDEers. I've never had a near-death experience either. Okay. But they talk about the soul incarnating in other places, but it doesn't incarnate like we do here in this super dense physical form, where everything here wants to hurt you and bite you and sting you, and you fall off everything, and gravity is so strong, and which is another one of my arguments about how we're not from here. I mean, everything here wants to kill you.
Yeah. Even the oxygen, right? Like I'd read something that oxygen is it's like a slow poisoning.
Yeah. I mean, what your human body physically fights against oxidation, right? But we use that to. It's weird. It's just a weird thing. Like I can swim around in this pool of acid, but I better not get any in my mouth, kind of thing. But I have to swim around the pool of acid. It's just silly. But anyway, they talk a lot about that, and I found that to be very interesting because it's when you come to Earth, that's the one place that you really make huge spiritually evolutionary advances. Okay, you can advance slowly on these other areas, but it's when you come here and bring this, interact with the other humans, the other souls here, is where you can make those big evolutionary leaps. This is the one place that you can come to rectify the effects of the karma you have created, right?
Absolutely.
A lot of people believe that, and so yeah, I totally see what you're after there. Yeah, I never, the slave thing, but that we may be a part of that or how to explain this, almost like our souls are what's universal, but we may incarnate into these different, what we would call aliens, throughout our iterations, right?
This, I think, is a great segue into, so our soul incarnating in different spaces, different bodies, and to say extraterrestrial, literally this terrestrial planet, but like, not here. That's what we mean by extraterrestrial. But as far as Bram bringing up neuroscientists here, and the brain acting as a generator or a receiver, it makes me think of our soul being that universal experience. And then when we get into this physical body, what we're receiving are, we are able to receive like, the reference is like light codes and different channeled experiences. And then our brain goes on to project that onto this reality of whatever that may be. So the experiences that your soul has had, be it like, there are theories and discussions around interstellar wars that have happened. Well, that would then, when we incarnate into this body, we come with that experience and then may go on to pursue it from a soul level in order to maybe release that karma. There's a lot of different directions that can go, that it can go in, as far as the soul first, and then what the brain does with the soul's information. At least that's what Bram's comment made me think of.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting because you have well, I wouldn't say a group of people, probably the majority of people on Earth follow the God of Abraham, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's about half of the planet, right? For them, this is a one-shot good deal. Okay, you live once, judgment, heaven or hell, right? It kind of ends. But for the ways that you and I might think, and the other half, right? This thing is way bigger than that. Like way bigger than that, right? And I think that's cool. So I'm attracted to that idea just because I think it's cool.
I mean, that's enough. Does it need to be more than that?
Yeah, I mean that's good enough for me. Barring any personal firsthand experience. I mean, I know it's different for people that have had that experience, and I just haven't. Let me tell you about my client, Lady Linda.
Please.
Okay. All right. So Linda, she's probably 73, 74, something like that, right? I think I met her when she was 70, right? And she was listening to the Coast to Coast AM radio show and heard Katrina on there, right? And she contacted, is that right? She contacted you and found out that not only did we live 5 houses down from her, okay, this is a national show, and that we live right down the street from her, but that we have the store in Shingle Springs, so she wanted to come in there and talk about, they were being harassed by ghosts, right? And they came in there, and it wasn't just a story. They had video on a cell phone, noise, visuals, night vision visuals, stuff like that. And it was pretty, it was worth looking into, let's say that, right? But then I started talking to Linda, who apparently recognized me as someone from her soul family, right? And we started getting into the crystal bowls, right? She was an old crystal bowl toner for Osho. Do you remember him?
Yes.
Remember Osho? She was one of his guys, or
Wow.
she was one of his people, not guys. I'm sorry, and would play these crystal bowls at some of their what do you call that? The hutba,
like a puja?
Satsang, puja. Okay, well, it wasn't really a puja. It wasn't about a god, but it was like a satsang, right? Okay. So you have the guru sitting there, and it's like question and answer stuff and meditation. So a satsang, and she would play the bowls there, right? And I actually have this bowl that she played. It's one of the first crystal bowls probably ever made, because that was something that didn't come around until the late 70s, right?
Right.
And anyway, that's another story in and of itself. But she was absolutely chock full of alien stories, light ship visitations, constant communication with these things. And she would use the bowls. So I thought it was interesting you mentioned the crystal bowls, because she would use these bowls to communicate with these aliens, with the beings from the light ship. She never said the word Pleiadians or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But I have some pictures of the stuff that was in her house, which burnt down just like ours did, because like I said, she's only 5 houses down from us, right? So I have some of the pictures that were in there, like the of the light ships and stuff like that. And the Lemurians, okay, the Mount Shasta, there's Lemurians, and there's something else. It starts with a T. Telos.
So the city is Telos.
Yeah, the city of Telos. Yeah, and like that's an entrance to the city of Telos, and they meet in the noctilucent clouds to obscure their light ships and all this stuff. And she had the most incredible stories, and whether she was crazy or not, she wasn't lying about it. You know what I mean? Now you can talk to somebody, you can tell they might be wrong, but she wasn't lying. She wasn't trying to deceive me, right?
Right.
So she would play these bowls, and I would go over there, and we made these recordings where I would play bowls with her, and we would sing while we're playing these bowls. And that's when this communication would happen, right? It didn't happen to me, to her. I know. I'm kind of pissed, because I'm like, I'm right here. I'm singing just as loud as everyone, as her. Anyway, whatever. I never got the communication, and I was so bummed, because I'm totally open to that kind of thing. It's like, why not me, right? What's the problem? Why am I blocked from this?
Well, so I've heard different theories, right? It's not necessarily about like wrongness, but the wiring, the connection. Like you are one of the few people that I know who is both like spiritual and analytical.
Mm-hmm.
And consistently in my experiences, like in classes where analytical people arrive, like that's always what's brought up. Well, your mind is wired analytically, and so any information that would come through would be analyzed through that process, and therefore it's not just, and I don't know, but science brain seems to be the answer, right? Like your antenna is science brain.
Oh, okay.
Seems to be the answer.
Well, yes, I have heard that is a filter that kind of eliminates the perception of the supernatural, right? But I have had experiences in the depths of meditation that I would consider to be holy and absolutely convincing me of a creator and an afterlife and all that stuff. There's no filter there, right? And it may have been the depths of that kind of meditation that have allowed for the removal of a filter I may naturally possess. I don't know.
Okay.
But there it was. And since I have had that experience, I would think that to present me with other similar experiences would not be. It wouldn't be difficult for me to be able to perceive that.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. Well, I mean, and only theorizing what it might have been. We can also look at the way that different cultures interacted with extraterrestrials and the material that came forward, right? So you had individuals that in indigenous cultures would go into trance, and that's how the information would come through, and they would have certain times of years where maybe extraterrestrials perceived as gods or goddesses would, reward attention and celebration and things like that. I've seen theories around that sort of thing. And then you have, who's to say that other people, it wasn't a direct experience. It was like looking at technologies that were left behind, and then human beings just doing what they naturally do, which is to explore and try and test out or have feelings about. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is maybe your experience, and I can't speak for you, but maybe your experience was like a launching point for those, for other holy experiences, right? Like it was just sort of an activation to be around this woman, to work with the singing bowls the way that you do, and to be introduced to technology that they may have given her through those singing bowls and such, for you to go on and have other experiences. Like maybe the alien path isn't for you. I don't know. And it doesn't have to be anything either.
Yeah, it's not. We're going to find out. We're all going to find out anyway.
Right.
At some
point.
We
do know they're real. We do know they're real because of, unclassified documents and things of that nature. So.
Yeah. You know who Bob Lazar is?
No, I don't.
You don't? Wow. So Bob Lazar, Lazar. All right. This was the guy in the 80s, okay, that worked at Area 51. Okay. And I think it was in Popular Science or something, where he told his story. Okay. And how, because he told that story, him and his family members and all that were just endlessly harassed by the State Department, the IRS, and all this kind of stuff. But this guy was an engineer at is it Lawrence Livermore? No, Alamo. He was in not Alamo. Shit, Alamogordo. What's the name of that? What's the name of that laboratory down in New Mexico? Sorry. No, White Sands. Shit. Anyway, look this guy up, because he was just on Joe Rogan a couple years ago, bringing this story back up in front of hundreds of millions of people now, right? And this guy, it may be a 3-hour interview, right? And this guy tells an absolutely riveting account of his dealings at this restricted area in Groom Lake, Nevada, right? And I'm talking about like being inside of the spacecraft, okay? Wow. How their engines, trying to reverse engineer how their engines work, things like that. And again, with this guy, I watched this guy tell his interview. Now, his story has not changed since the 80s, okay? Because I remember when this happened, right? And this guy also gives me the impression that he might be wrong or might be crazy. Los Alamos. Thank you. Los Alamos. Okay, I'm thinking Alamo. I'm like, wait a minute, that's that building in San Antonio. This guy gives me the impression that he's not lying. He's not. He has gained nothing by telling this story. Okay, no book deals, no movies, nothing like that. Nothing but BS from the government. Okay, kind of stuff. It's just really interesting, and you should watch it. You should see it. Whatever you think about Joe Rogan doesn't do a lot of talking. Okay, it's just hearing this guy's story.
Oh, that's good.
It's pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. So
Well,
you were talking about how we found things. So
yeah. And I think there's space for that as far as like alien interactions are concerned, no matter what your experiences. And then who's to say that some of the experiences that what did you call them, anti-atheists, are having are not of an extraterrestrial nature, but just that's too much for the mind to conceptualize. So they're like, no, it's just God.
Yeah.
We don't really know.
Yeah. God of the Gaps is used a lot.
God of the Gaps.
God of the Gaps, yeah, and the gaps get smaller and smaller, but every time there's a gap of knowledge, it's like God.
Oh my goodness!
Wow. Years ago, it's like, why is there thunder and lightning? God,
God, right?
That's how
it's all God.
That's
how you answer it.
Yeah. So,
well, as far as like aliens are concerned, like I said in the broadcast preview, guys, this could go in so many different directions. We talked about so many different things, and I mean, there's no shortage of theories as far as extraterrestrials are concerned, aliens, when they've been here, what they're doing here now, are we that? I was going to throw in there, have you heard that theory that everybody with, I think it's Rh negative blood types is not from planet Earth?
Yes. Yeah. So negative. Yeah, that went along. I heard that brought up in some of the Anunnaki stories. Okay, that like the people with that blood type, their DNA was actually partially from them and not completely created, or something like that. It's something
like that.
Some weird special kind of thing, and I'm O positive, so I don't take part in any of that anyway.
Well, I am AB negative, so I was like, woohoo! Not a human. Okay.
You're one of them. Oh, like the, I don't know, not the lizard people, but that's another interesting one, the lizard people, and I'm sure you've heard all that stuff, right?
Yeah. I've heard a lot about the reptilians.
Yeah, reptilians.
Reptilians, draconians. So like that's something that if we need a part 2 to this, because there's alien races, there's there's so many different avenues when it comes to conversations about aliens, and they all, for me, kind of point back to like us looking for us kind of thing. Who are we, where did we come from, and what are we here to do? That's sort of how these sort of extraterrestrial conversations usually play out for me, in terms of what I've read, how I've been able to interact with them, and what I've learned from other people.
Yeah, and does it help you make sense of the human experience?
No.
No? Okay. But for some people it does.
Maybe I should say it doesn't excuse the human experience. That's.
What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean is, like, if somebody was to say, well, like back to Arcturians tend to be very like straightforward and no nonsense, and I'm like, yeah, but if you come into this life and you're straightforward and no nonsense and you're a dick, you can't go around saying, well, it's because I'm an Arcturian. You know what I mean? Like, you're just
okay.
a dick. So,
Yeah. It's like, no, man, you're just an asshole.
Right. Or if you're Pleiadian, it's like, oh, well, Pleiadians are well known for being friendly and mixing with other races. It's like, no, I mean, if you like sex, you like sex. So that's
like someone being like, oh, I'm an Aries, that's why I'm like that. Like, give me a
yeah.
break,
Well, I've done that. I'm a Virgo.
because I'm a Scorpio. Yeah. Okay, so no, I understand what you mean. Yeah, definitely doesn't excuse it, but it may. We're all looking for answers.
Yeah.
Whence we come, whither we go, right? That's like, we kind of want to know those things as much as we want to know what our next meal is. It's really important to us. And so, the search goes on, and I think the alien thing adds an interesting and fun dimension to it. I think, like religion, okay, and someone trying to prove the existence of anything supernatural, we just don't. And when I say we, I mean like me, in my hands, in regular people's hands, not locked away in some government, top secret building, 20 floors underground. We just don't have a lot of hard evidence. I mean, we've had photography for 147 years, and we don't even have any really good pictures.
Right.
And everyone has a Class A camera, like the most amazing camera in their pockets, and we really don't have. Like, you would think we would have a ton of stuff, and we do, that always appears to be debunked later on, and that's kind of disappointing, because Fox Mulder, I mean, I want to believe. I do. I want to believe in that. I believe in it, in that, like what I said earlier, that I think it would be more likely than not, just given the sheer volume of inhabitable planets, that there isn't other forms of life.
Right.
I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. And it would also not make sense to me. I mean, we have been able to divine through not the Hubble telescope, that new one, that our galaxy itself is very young with respect to the rest of the universe.
Oh, okay? Yeah, we're babies.
Yeah, we're right. So the possibility of there being radically advanced life forms is almost falls into the no shit category, right? For me, anyway. But we still don't have. We just don't seem to have a lot of hard evidence.
Okay, well, so we have theory here in art history and biblically. so that sort of that verbal account, I guess, as far as biblically is concerned, not verbal, but like literature account, and then our best depictions in maybe older art forms done by earlier stages of humanity. So yeah.
Yeah, very, very similar to what William Bramley does in The Gods of Eden, when he talks about the biblical accounts, how they were probably looking at pieces of aircraft or some kind of craft that these beings were in. The way they describe the chariot, and you're like, wow, that's landing gear, the voice of many rivers, I mean, what could that be? What would you be hearing that you would describe as the voice of many rivers? Stuff like that. Of course, does it more eloquently than I do here. Like I said, I read the book like 25 years ago, but if anyone hasn't read that book, you should. You should go. I'm sure you can get it for $1 on Amazon. So.
It is going in the chat now in the comments section. So
there you go.
Feel like you're missing out. It's there.
Yeah. It's so I agree with that, but I'm for the evidence. I mean, I'm talking about now. Like, where's our now evidence? And it's just it's frustrating, because, like I said, I want to see that. If it's there, I want to know about it.
Yeah.
So now, have you yourself channeled with any of these beings?
Yes. So when I was making reference to Regulus, that was a collection. Regulus is a star, and the collection of beings that came through was talking about, being from there and what was in store for planet Earth. It was 2019. We were so young and naive. And it was me and a group of like, I want to say maybe 7 individuals where, I mean, the purpose of the beings coming through me was to offer guidance. And so I went into my trance state and questions were just asked. What do we need to know? A few people asked about themselves personally. And as far as my experiences are concerned, I can't speak for others. There's always a level of benevolence to the things that come through. I mean, it's not happenstance. That's not happenstance. I mean, I believe in there's evil everywhere. And so I do my best to, pray, smudge, protect, what have you, so that I'm not, one, bringing through my own issues or allowing something that is not a positive match for the experience to come through. But yeah, that has happened, and it's an interesting experience. What I can describe it physically, because I don't think that's talked about very often. One, it's a lot of pressure. It feels like gravity grows about 2 or 3 times. So it does, like, eventually my shoulders are hurting. The weight, the weight of my body is a problem and creates a level of soreness. There's definitely a lot of exhaustion, as if I ran several miles. I don't remember the experience because I'm not there. And for me, that's like there's a layer of skepticism for me. And I feel like if I had conscious memory of what was going on and what exactly was said, for me, it's like, oh, you made it up. And so that's been sort of me and my brain have a deal. and so I kind of fade to the background with that and let them say whatever they're going to say. So ideally in these situations, I'm recording. So that one is actually recorded, that channeling session. And I want to say it's on YouTube. And I have channeled other beings too. There's one called Helios who has come through and delivered messages as well. You look like you have a question.
Yeah, where can we find that?
Yeah, I'll send you the link.
Okay, I want to see that.
Experience. And I mean, I don't know if it's appropriate to say on here, but I'll be teaching people how to do that in November.
Oh, really?
So maybe not aliens, but whatever is resonant to you.
Yeah. I'm sorry, continue.
No, go.
So are you familiar with the Stargate sessions? The idea of using a Stargate in meditations and for this type of communion?
So there's Orion, right? I tend to look to like the stars and different things like that. So information that I've come across is that Orion, the not the belt necessarily, but that star system, the whole star system, is its own Stargate. It's what other extraterrestrials will use to come here or go other places. And so visualizing the Orion Stargate is my reference to that in meditation. Is that kind of where you're going?
No, so this is actually, there's a guy named Pragit Harris, and he channeled a design for this particular pyramid structure that he built that he calls the Stargate. Okay. And you gather around this thing and you do this particular meditation. And it's usually done at the top of Mount Shasta for the purpose of communing with the Atlanteans, the Lemurians, and, because I guess the top of Mount Shasta is some type of like equivalent to a ley line for extraterrestrial communication. Okay. And so they go up and do this. Well, they had this Stargate down in Diamond Springs at the Healing Center down here, right? And I was asked to go over there with that Linda lady to play our bowls and sing while they were doing their communion, meditation, right?
Nice.
And it was interesting. I'll say that. And even though I was there, not just meditating and doing all that, but in almost a facilitating capacity, right? I still got nothing. I still got nothing off of it. I'm so pissed.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. So like, yeah, but it's does he have any books? Anyway, you can search this guy online, Prageet Harris. Okay.
Prageet Harris.
Prageet, yeah, Prageet, and then Harris is common spelling.
There he
He's
is.
a white guy that took an Indian first name for some reason. I don't know what Prageet means. But,
And that's not a common experience at all.
yeah, no, not at all. But and I'm not. I've listened to this guy's shtick and all that, and I'm not a fan of this guy. Okay, I don't like this guy. Okay, but I thought the concept of what he was doing was interesting. With the sacred geometry and using that to commune with other entities and beings and things. That just seemed kind of cool to me. So
it's definitely interesting. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it was cool enough for me to at least give a fair shake to it, and not just be like, "Oh, that's stupid," and just disregard it. Because I don't do that. I'm not that kind of person. I'll always try something out. So.
Oh, apparently Brahms Beck isn't a fan of him either. So he's known maybe not to be the greatest individual. But you know what's interesting about like running into people that we aren't fans of is that sometimes you can, sort of mine out information that you can then go on to find value in rather than taking for the whole person as they are.
Oh, yeah. I probably learn more from people that I don't like than I do. I mean, trying to think of a good example. Oh, okay, Rush Limbaugh. That's a perfect example, right? Hate the guy. Absolutely hate the guy. And I had a personal experience with him, okay, that made me hate him even more. But his show, the people he brought on there, the subject matter that they were talking about could be very good. So same thing with Joe Rogan. I don't really care for Joe Rogan too much, but the people he talks to and then what he gets into is interesting. So yeah, just because I don't like someone doesn't mean I'm just going to completely disregard everything they have going on.
Well, and the fact that you said like you learn more from them, I think that has everything to do with how we. We're probably paying more attention. Like, what the hell else are they gonna say? Kind of thing.
Yeah. That's true.
This has been a delightful experience, and I mean that. I don't use that word lightly. And this has been wonderful. From the places that we could go, I feel like this was the best ADHD journey ever because we went so many different directions. My brain is happy, and I hope that you will.
Do you all normally stay on point when you're doing these discussions?
Never.
No, but I feel like this rabbit hole was pretty. I feel like we took a journey from the moon and back, and took several side detours.
It's deep. It really is.
Yeah,
it gets there.
So thank you for all of that. And if you guys have any additional, I want to thank Bram first of all for all of your comments. Like you were like right here with us the whole time, and we didn't get to see all of them, but just know that we did see you. And if any of you guys have firsthand accounts or stories, we'd love to hear them. Thank you, Eric, for sharing such great stories about this Linda person. It's just fascinating.
Yeah, she was definitely interesting. To say the least. Yeah. And we again, as always, would love to have you back on any. I feel like this extraterrestrial concept could go into talking about the multiverse
but
Mhm.
because we talked about the many different planets and habitable planets, and that's immediately where my mind went. It was like, yep, there's just us in different planets, in different dimensions, in different realities. So maybe that's the next mountain to climb conversationally.
Sounds good.
Well, with that, everyone, thank you for joining the broadcast, and we will catch you next time on Crossroads of Cognizance. Bye, everybody.
I'm trying to get Katrina in here.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.